The words hit me before I could process them, and something strange happened to my hands. They went completely numb, like the blood had simply stopped flowing. My fork hung suspended over a slice of pumpkin pie, while my grandmother's voice sliced through the cheerful chaos of Thanksgiving dinner. "Grace, answer me. Why is there an elderly couple I don't recognize living in the $1 million lakeside house I bought for you?" The numbness spread up my arms and into my chest. Across the table, my father Richard's knife clattered against his plate. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. "My name is Grace, I'm 28, and I work 3 jobs just to keep my head above water. This is the story of how I discovered my own family had been drowning me on purpose." My grandmother Eleanor had just returned from 5 years overseas. She looked different, sharper somehow, wrapped in an authority that made the air feel thinner. "Grandma, what did you just say?" My voice came out fractured. "The lakeside vacation home, Grace. The one I bought for you 3 years ago, for your future." Her tone was calm, but I could feel something volcanic underneath. There has to be some mistake. I forced myself to breathe. "I don't own any house. I don't even have my own apartment. I got evicted last month. I've been sleeping on friends' couches." My grandmother's eyebrow twitched. I knew something was wrong. I went to check on the property as soon as I landed. You weren't there. Instead, an elderly couple answered the door. They said they were the parents of Brooke's husband, Tyler. She turned her gaze to my sister, sitting rigid beside me. "Brooke, would you care to explain?" Out of the corner of my eye, I watched my sister's hand tremble around her wine glass. Her breathing had gone shallow and quick. "Grandma," Brooke's voice pitched high. There must be some mix-up. You just got back. You're exhausted. Maybe you got the address wrong." "That's right, Mom." My mother, Patricia, jumped in, sweat beading on her forehead. "It's just jet lag. Your memory's playing tricks. Come on, the turkey's getting cold." "Be quiet." My grandmother's voice came down like a hammer. Despite her age, the force of it made everyone at the table flinch. My mind is not failing me. The address, the exterior. It was exactly the house I signed the contract for. She reached into her handbag and slid a photograph across the table. And more importantly, this is what Tyler's parents told me. "We're staying in this home owned by our son's wife, Brooke." The color drained from my sister's face. In the photo stood a beautiful lakeside mansion, and in front of it, smiling for the camera, Brooke, her husband Tyler, and his parents. I stared at the image, my vision tunneling. This was the same house Brooke had posted on Instagram 3 years ago with the caption hashtag #MyNewVacationHome. Back then, I was working myself into the ground with 3 part-time jobs, wondering why I couldn't make ends meet. "What is going on?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Mom, Dad, what does this mean? Grandma bought a house for me. Then why am I practically homeless?" My father looked away. "Mom, it's complicated. Today's Thanksgiving. Talking about money at a family dinner isn't really appropriate, is it? We can discuss this tomorrow in my study." "No." My grandmother cut him off. "We're settling everything right here, right now." She turned to me, her expression softening slightly. "Grace, you truly don't know anything about the $1 million vacation home I sent you 3 years ago. $1 million. The number made the room spin. This morning, my bank account held $12.50. I'd been juggling 3 jobs, sacrificing sleep, watching everything disappear into student loan payments and rent I could barely afford. $1 million was a number from another universe. "I don't know anything," I said. "I've never seen a vacation home. Nobody ever told me anyone bought one for me." My grandmother's gaze hardened as she turned to my parents. "George, Patricia, you told me Grace was mentally unstable, incapable of managing money. You said you'd act as her guardians and manage the property on her behalf until she was ready." "Wait, what?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, Dad, when was I ever mentally unstable? I graduated at the top of my class. I've worked constantly. I've never caused you any trouble." "Grace, calm down." My mother's voice dropped to a warning. There was no concern in her eyes, only a message. "Don't say anything you'll regret." "You're getting worked up. See? This is exactly what I mean by unstable." "Don't you dare!" I shot to my feet. My chair crashed to the floor behind me. I am perfectly normal. You're the ones who are sick. When I couldn't pay my rent, you told me I wasn't trying hard enough. You told me to be more independent. And the whole time, behind my back, you handed over a house in my name to Brooke? How dare you speak to your parents like that? My father slammed his fist on the table. We did it for your own good. You don't have the ability to manage assets, so we entrusted them to Brooke. For my own good. The absurdity left me too numb even to cry. Oh, shut up already, Brooke screamed suddenly. A plain, boring woman like you doesn't deserve a beautiful house like that. We put it to good use. You should be thanking us. That's enough. My grandmother's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She rose slowly, leaning on her cane, and walked over to me. Her hand settled gently on my shaking shoulder. Grace is right. All of you are rotten. Completely rotten to the core. Mom, that's going too far. My father's face twisted. We did everything for the family's sake. There is no family here. My grandmother's tone could have frozen the lake outside. There are only hyenas who fed on their own granddaughter's property. Tonight, everything gets settled. She pulled out her phone and pressed a speed dial number. Come in, please. Yes, right now. The front door opened, letting in a gust of cold November air and a man in a tailored suit. Mr. Hendricks, my grandmother's personal attorney. He carried a thick briefcase. Mrs. Mitchell, I've brought all the documents as instructed. What is this? My father staggered backward. Richard, Patricia, and Brooke. My grandmother's voice rang out. I will now go through every fraudulent act you committed, one page at a time. Don't think for a moment you can escape. I wiped my tears and lifted my head. The room had gone completely silent. The warmth of my grandmother's hand gave me strength. This wasn't the time to cry. These people needed to face what they'd done. In the dead silence, I let out a small laugh. I straightened slowly, shedding the mask of the frightened victim I'd been wearing. That's enough acting, Grandma. Yes, indeed, Grace. I've been thoroughly entertained. My parents and Brooke stared at us, mouths hanging open. What? Grace, why are you laughing? My mother's voice trembled. Because you've been played. I looked at each of them in turn. A week ago, Grandma contacted me. Not through you, through my aunt. Aunt Clara had found me on social media, something you never thought to monitor. Once Grandma reached me, she hired a private investigator who traced the anonymous emails to Dad's IP address and uncovered the hidden account Mom had been funneling my payments into. Grandma covered every expense. The attorney, the forensic analysts, the handwriting experts. She said it was the least she could do after 3 years of believing your lies about me. I let that sink in. From that moment, we knew everything. That's why we staged tonight. This whole Thanksgiving dinner was a setup. We waited for you to let your guard down and confess your crimes with your own mouths. We were set up? My father went pale and tried to stand. Sit down. One word from my grandmother pinned him to his chair. This isn't over. It's only beginning. Mr. Hendricks, let's start with the forged gift agreement. Mr. Hendricks slid a document to the center of the table. This property, Lakeside Manor, was originally purchased by Mrs. Mitchell in Grace Mitchell's name. However, the current registered owner is Brooke Lawson. The transfer date is listed as October 15th, 3 years ago. The sale price, $1. A gift, $1. That was the price they'd put on my life. I stared at the date. October, 3 years ago. Exactly when I'd graduated from college and started drowning under student loans and expenses. The moment my life began to derail. I always knew something was wrong, I said quietly. I graduated top of my class. I had recommendations from my professors. I made it to final interviews at several major companies. And somehow, every single one of them rejected me without explanation. I fixed my gaze on my father. His eyes darted away. Around that time, anonymous emails were sent to those companies' HR departments. Emails claiming that Grace Mitchell suffers from severe mental illness and was a troublemaker at her university. What are you talking about? He tried to play dumb. IP addresses don't lie, Dad. Those emails were sent from this house. The timestamps match the hours you were in your study. You sabotaged my career on purpose, didn't you? Because if I became independent, you couldn't keep committing fraud using my name. No, it was for your own good. And you, Mom. I turned to face her. I finally understand why, no matter how hard I worked, I never saved any money. Why I kept failing credit card applications. Mr. Hendricks produced a set of bank statements. This is the account Grace used to repay her student loans. She deposited money every month from her jobs. However, the funds were automatically redirected, not to the loan agency, but to a hidden account in Mrs. Patricia Mitchell's name. That's... My mother gasped. And yet, Mom, you kept telling me I wasn't trying hard enough, that I should be more like Brooke. My voice hardened. Because of you, I was blacklisted as a delinquent borrower. I couldn't rent a proper apartment. You destroyed my credit. You forced me to work 3 jobs and still live in fear of ending up on the streets. My mother's hands flew to her mouth. My poverty wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a lack of effort. It was a cage my own parents had deliberately built around me. And you, Brooke, I turned to my sister. She glared back like she was the victim here. Tyler's parents are living in the vacation house, aren't they? So what if they are? She jutted out her chin. They retired and wanted a quiet place. I let them stay. What's wrong with that? It's better than leaving it empty. You let them stay for free? Of course. They're family. Don't lie. Mr. Hendricks presented another document. These are deposit records for a bank account under Brooke Lawson's name. On the first of every month, $5,000 is transferred from the account of Tyler Lawson's parents. The stated purpose: rent. My grandmother spoke first. Brooke, so you not only stole Grace's house, but you've been squeezing rent out of your own in-laws? No, that's not, Brooke screamed. That was a maintenance fee. It's a huge house. It costs money to keep up. And Tyler's parents are loaded anyway. $5,000 a month is nothing to them. That's not the point. My voice was quiet but sharp. You took my house without permission and made $5,000 a month off it. Meanwhile, I, the actual owner, could barely afford food. You knew that. Brooke's eyes darted away. Mom, listen. My father leaned forward desperately. Yes, maybe we were a little heavy-handed, but look at the outcome. The house is well maintained. Brooke's in-laws are happy. Isn't that better for the family than letting Grace live there alone? We can always give Grace some money later. A settlement. A settlement? My grandmother repeated in a low voice. The stem of her wineglass creaked in her grip. When my granddaughter was on the verge of sleeping on the streets, you were living in luxury off her property, and now you think you can settle this with money? But Mom, Grace is still young. Hardship builds character. Shut up. My grandmother's roar echoed through the room. I wrote to Grace every single month. I asked how the house was if she was having any trouble. I never received a single reply. Instead, Richard kept telling me, Grace is so mentally unstable she can't even write a thank you note. I shook my head. Not a single letter ever reached me. Of course not. My grandmother turned to my parents. Every letter I sent was addressed to this house. You claimed Grace was unstable and said you'd hold on to them for her. You never gave me her real address. You crushed my letters and cut off all her contact with me. That's because, my mother shouted, you seemed so busy overseas. The real reason my grandmother and I had lost touch was finally clear. The physical distance, the wall my parents had built between us. Everything fell into place, revealing the full ugliness of what they'd done. Enough excuses. I took a deep breath and nodded to Mr. Hendricks. Let's look at this from a legal standpoint. Mr. Hendricks displayed on his tablet the transfer agreement Brooke was using as her ownership claim. Miss Lawson, you stated this document represents a legitimate transfer from Grace 3 years ago, correct? Yes, just look at the date. Brooke was drenched in sweat. Indeed, it does say that, but we conducted a digital forensic analysis of the paper itself. He pressed a button, and a magnified image appeared. Beneath the paper fibers, a pattern of tiny dots, imperceptible to the naked eye, emerged. This is a machine identification code. Many color laser printers embed microscopic yellow dots recording the printer's serial number and the exact date and time of printing. What? Brooke's mouth fell open. After analyzing these dots, we determined this document was printed exactly 6 months ago. That's interesting, I said with a cold smile. Why would a contract supposedly signed 3 years ago be printed on paper from 6 months ago? In other words, this document was fabricated 6 months ago. I looked from my father to my mother to Brooke, and I know exactly why. 6 months ago, Grandma told you she might be coming home soon. You panicked. Until then, you'd been illegally occupying my house based on nothing but verbal agreements. But once Grandma came back and checked the property records, your lies would be exposed. My father clutched his head. So you rushed to forge documents to cover yourselves. But you couldn't ask me to sign anything without giving yourselves away. So Brooke copied my handwriting and forged my signature, backdating it 3 years. The handwriting analysis confirms it, Mr. Hendricks added. This signature matches Brooke Lawson's handwriting with 99% probability. This constitutes forgery of a private document. Furthermore, Miss Lawson falsely claimed to be Grace's legal guardian and withdrew $1 million from Grace's account under the pretense of property maintenance costs. That's fraud and embezzlement. Fraud? Brooke began shaking uncontrollably. Prison? No, this can't be happening. Dad, say something. You're the one who said as long as we backdate it, it'll be fine. You idiot, my father roared. Shut your mouth. The police have already been notified, Mr. Hendricks said calmly. Miss Lawson, criminal charges will be filed immediately. No, help me, Brooke screamed. Dad told me to do it. He said Grace was stupid. She'd never notice. He told me to just copy her signature. I only did what I was told. Brooke, you're throwing your own father under the bus? But it's the truth. Mom said it too. She laughed and said Grace would never be able to repay her loans anyway, so we might as well use the money ourselves. It had always been this way. Brooke was the pretty one, the charming one, the one who married well. I was the afterthought. Reliable, hardworking, invisible, the perfect target. Brooke, don't say another word! My mother lunged at her. It was pathetic. The people who'd been preaching about family love and loyalty moments ago were now screaming accusations at each other, desperately trying to shift blame. My grandmother watched with cold eyes. That's enough. I've seen enough of your ugliness. Don't stain this table any further. She turned to the attorney. Mr. Hendricks, the revision to my will is complete. Yes, Mrs. Mitchell, this is the latest will. It fully revokes the inheritance rights of Richard Mitchell, Patricia Mitchell, and Brooke Lawson, including her spouse. It designates Miss Grace Mitchell as the sole heir to the entire estate. The entire estate! My parents shouted in unison. Mom, please wait! My father's pride evaporated instantly. We're sorry. We've reflected on everything. Please. If you want to apologize, do it to Grace, my grandmother said icily. She's the victim, not me. All 3 of them turned to me, their eyes pleading, calculating, still assuming that because we were family, I'd eventually forgive them. I lifted my wine glass and took a slow sip. Then I smiled. No, I'm fresh out of mercy. The only thing I have for you is an invoice. I accepted the final document from Mr. Hendricks. This is a demand for restitution of unjust enrichment over the past 3 years, plus damages for emotional distress. The total amount due is $2 million. If payment isn't made by tomorrow, criminal prosecution proceeds immediately. $2 million. My father's voice cracked. We don't have that kind of money. Then sell what you do have, I said flatly. The house, the cars, the jewelry, and that lakeside property Tyler's parents are living in, they vacate immediately. No. Brooke collapsed to the floor. If I kick out Tyler's parents, he'll divorce me. That's your problem, Brooke, not mine. When I lost my job and my credit was destroyed, did any of you worry about me? No, you mocked me. Now it's your turn. A heavy knock sounded at the dining room door. 2 officers in uniform stepped inside. Brooke Lawson, please come with us to the station. No, help me. I didn't do anything wrong. Brooke screamed as they led her away. My parents, still in shock, were handcuffed next. Grace, I'm sorry. My mother sobbed, looking at me through tears. I was wrong. Please, please drop the charges. Goodbye, Mom, I said without looking away. You'll have plenty of time to think about what you did. As the police sirens faded into the night, only my grandmother, Mr. Hendricks, and I remained in the vast dining room. I let out a long breath. It wasn't exhaustion. It was relief, like a curse finally lifting. "It's over, Grandma." "Yes," she said gently, pulling me into an embrace. "Actually, that's not quite right. This is where it begins. Your real life." 1 year has passed since that night. I'm standing on the wooden deck of Lakeside Manor. This place is finally truly mine. Brooke, Tyler, and his parents were evicted within 72 hours. Tyler's parents claimed they'd been told the house belonged to their daughter-in-law and that they were victims too. But because they'd lived there knowing the rent was suspiciously cheap and the paperwork was sketchy, they were questioned as potential accomplices. Brooke was sentenced to 3 years in prison. She divorced Tyler and was bankrupted by damages and legal fees. My parents lost all social credibility and were cut off by relatives across the board. My father's business collapsed. Both were convicted of fraud and conspiracy. My father received 2 years, my mother 18 months. Tyler, mortified by his family's involvement in the scandal, moved across the country and remarried within the year. The embezzled funds were recovered through asset seizure and returned to me in full. I hear my parents are scraping by in a tiny apartment now. I don't have their contact information. I don't want it. As for me, I started a new business from this quiet home: online consulting, financial planning, and support for people who've been through what I experienced. When I began sharing my story, the response was overwhelming. Within months, my schedule was booked solid. My income grew to many times what I made when I was juggling 3 jobs. I don't depend on anyone anymore. I've achieved real independence. On weekends, my grandmother comes to stay. We sit by the fireplace talking and laughing, reclaiming the 3 years that were stolen from us. One evening, gazing out over the lake, she said, "You didn't just take back what was stolen. Through your integrity and courage, you built something even better." I looked at the water, peaceful and still. "This is my home," I said, "the place I protect, the place I love." "I'm happy, Grandma." And I meant it with everything I had. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. 0 cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.